All right, we're just gonna give everyone a little bit more time to join and then we will start. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Layla Mohammed, Program Coordinator at Black Mountain Institute. If you aren't already familiar with Black Mountain Institute, we aim to bring writers and the literary imagination to the rest of the public, into the heart of the public. We do this by way of year-round events like this one, through fellowships, through student enrichment opportunities, and through publications like The Believer and Witness magazine. A few reminders before we get started. Please mark your calendars for a few upcoming events. If you haven't already taken a listen, on Sunday we launched the pilot episode for Black Mountain Radio. You can listen to the first episode on podcast apps and on our website, blackmountainradio.org. Breakout nonfiction writer Esme Wang will be joining us on November 4th. And then the next show and tell, Intimacy Performance Spectacle with Bonnie Chau and special guests, is on November 30th. Also, please buy copies of Bonnie's book through the writer's block, especially if you'd like a signed copy. And now a little bit about BMI Shearing Fellow Bonnie Chau, who will introduce the rest of our guests. Bonnie Chau is a writer from Southern California. She earned her MFA in creative, she earned her MFA in fiction and translation from Columbia University and has received fellowship and residency support from Kundiman, Farm Nebraska, the American Literary Translators Association, Vermont Studio Center, and the Millay Colony. She is the author of the short story collection, All Roads Lead to Blood. Please help me welcome through the chat, Bonnie Chau.
Thanks, Layla. And thanks everyone for being here. So I'm just gonna go quickly over the format of today's or tonight's event. I'm gonna introduce our special guests for this evening, and then we are each going to be doing a little show and tell segment. And then we'll be having just a conversation, a rambling conversation probably. And then hopefully there will be some of you out there who will be also doing a show and tell. So if you are interested in doing that, you'll want to click on Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And you can do this at any time. And just type into the Q&A thing your object or the thing that you want to be show and telling. And then we will be pulling people up as a panelist, so everyone will be able to see you and your show and tell. And you will have everyone's attention for, I don't know, I would say maybe like 2 minutes. So hopefully some of you will be interested in doing that. You're also free to put in that Q&A thing, any questions you might have for any or all of us. Okay, so I think that is it. And now I will introduce our 3 guests for tonight. All right. So Hyun Gi Park is a Korean-American artist based in LA. Her work has involved recreating rituals into fictionalized ceremonies with New Age health trends and consecrating them, using incense to reimagine new time structures, and installation and digital works that attempt to replicate the visceral and immortalize it. She also works as a tattooer, incense maker, bookbinder, designer, and runs BABOSHOP, a multi-use space and studio. Chukwuma Ndulue is the author of the chapbook Boys Quarter. His work has appeared in Boat, Muse, a Journal, Tinderbox, Pink, Brooklyn Poets, and other publications. He has been the recipient of fellowships from Columbia University and Kenyon College. And Maxwell Williams is a perfumer, olfactory artist, DJ producer, and researcher based in LA as well. He sits on the board of the Institute for Art and Olfaction. His work places perfume in the context of performance, sculpture, and photography by exploring a personal history of sadomasochism, techno and gabber raves, global trade routes, heartbreak, and the psychology behind the hedonics of scent. So thank you all for being here. And we're gonna start off with our show and tell. I'm so excited for this. I think Hyunji, you're going first, right?
Yep. Thank you for the introduction and for having me. Yeah, so my name is Hyunji. I have an object. It's a talisman. I'll hold it up for quite a while. It is on yellow mulberry paper and red cinnabar ink. So these are prominent in Korean shamanism. I get them from my grandparents. They're also common in Taoism as well. So red and yellow were thought to deter evil. They're also for various reasons, for like good luck, repelling against evil spirits, or you can get very specific to like passing a test or safety from car accidents. So you're actually supposed to carry them with you everywhere. So I typically put them in my wallet, just like fold it up. I have some other ones. Traditionally, they were also meant to be sewn into your clothing or placed above your doorway. So I kind of like to think of it as like a lucky object, kind of like, you know, if you carry around like a rock or something that somehow is now lucky, or like wear lucky socks for a game day. And like in terms of ritual, actually every Lunar New Year, I receive new ones and then I burn them to release the energy. And sometimes I'll drink the ashes. So I've used it a lot in my past works of like recreating talismans, also kind of tying into my other work of tattooing. The cinnabar ink that's used for the red ink, it's actually a mineral and it's used also in Chinese medicine. It's used as a natural sedative, but also for heart conditions, but it's actually toxic. It has mercury, but it's used for its red pigment for ink, but also crafts and also in tattoo inks. So lots of red tattoo inks might contain small traces of cinnabar, which some people might react to. But I thought that was like a really interesting overlap. But yeah, that's my object.
Thanks, Hyunji. I actually forgot the Maxwell, right? Is that the order?
Okay, so I'm fairly like I don't really have a lot of superstitions. There are a lot of superstitions in perfumery, but I was going to kind of talk about luck and fortune a little bit more in the abstract, although I did have a couple of things. You know, we all know kind of like sage oil. I don't know if you guys can see this. You know, I have like some frankincense, and that's like used a lot for fortune, and as is myrrh. And then I have like ylang ylang oil, and a lot of people think of that as being kind of, you know, something that you can use to anoint yourself for luck and love. A lot of like, you know, candle makers use these things like lemongrass for work, rosemary for, I can't remember what rosemary's for, but it's for luck, and orange blossom you burn if you want to like have luck in marriage and those types of things. But I think what I was going to show you a little bit more is one of my perfumes, or a couple of them. This is one of the perfumes that I have recently released. It's called Anal, and this is another one that is called Liquid that I released with Cum Teas, which is a fashion label, and I'll hold them up a little bit more. But basically, to me, I like to think about luck and fortune kind of in the abstract, more a little bit about like the idea that abstraction is in and of itself a kind of like a luck. When I'm making perfumes, I tend to kind of just go for it. And sometimes I'll have a brief from a client, or sometimes I'll just be making it on myself and I'll have an idea of something that I want to make, and I'll just kind of wing it for the most part and hope that it gets to where I'm going. And I think that has a little bit of it's couched a little bit in perfume history, in the sense that like one of the most famous perfumers in the world, Jean Carl, he actually was a nosmic for the last few years of his life, even though he continued to make perfumes. He had his son smell his perfumes for him. And I also kind of wanted to point out that Bonnie is actually also a nosmic, which I think is, it's very interesting. I think about that kind of like a little bit as like the luck of our genomes as well, the luck of like our DNA, and how we can encounter the world just by like the way that we were born with our variety and various bodies. And I guess that's my thing. These are my show and tell as my perfumes. All right, cool. I'm done.
Thanks, Maxwell. Okay, so I am gonna go next. And my object is, I tried to practice. Hopefully you can see this. Okay, so here is a photo on my phone, and it's my phone background basically. And it's a photo of two checks, or the corner of two checks. Well, maybe I'll show you again later so you can look at it again. But basically it's been my phone background for about, I don't know, like since the end of last December. There were two rent checks, and one of them is mine, one of them was my roommate's. And what happened was we had a system, we would put our rent checks like up on the fridge, and then they would be mailed out. And she had hers already on the fridge, and then she was out of town. This was the end of December. And then before I left to, I think, come back to California, probably, I went to put mine up. And then I saw that we had the exact same check number. And this kind of like blew my mind, I'll show you again. But I think the funny thing is that, I mean, I think I ended up like, I texted her the photo, I like told a couple other people, but it didn't really seem to blow anyone else's mind. You can see that. And, I was trying to think of like what object to show and tell. And I think I started thinking about like, well, clearly I set that as my phone background, is something I see like every day because it like meant something to me. Like what it means to me, I don't even know, but it's like, I guess it's like a symbol of some sort of, not just a coincidence, even though I think, that is what it is. But that's something, I guess where the subjectivity comes in is like, I have like deemed it something greater than a coincidence. A coincidence happens anywhere, but this means like, this must mean like something lucky, right? Basically, that's what I'm saying. Like, oh my God, this happened. I should go out and buy like a lottery ticket or something now. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's something that I think about a lot more being here in Vegas as well. I think I've always been like interested or drawn to the idea of luck because, for example, when like playing games or something, I've always felt like very like unskilled, like and inept, you know? So like I was really into the games where there's like no skills involved, which there aren't that many. It's like, you know, War, the card game War, right? I guess here, you know, the things that are based purely on luck, like slot machines or roulette, the idea that like it's a level playing field and anything could happen. When in fact, I just read that, you know, it's not maybe appropriate to call something a game if it's purely luck. I guess it's goes against the definition of a game. But yeah, so that was kind of my thinking process, trying to think through why I am drawn towards that idea and what it is like being here. What draws me to kind of, you know, this, like Vegas has this like atmosphere of kind of anything can happen. And I think that largely has to do with, even if, you know, many of the things that are being played here are not roulette or slot machines. There are many other like not purely luck-based games. There is that does lend something to the atmosphere that there's a sort of egalitarianism that's available here. Okay, so that's my show and tell. And last person goes, Chooks.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. So when thinking about this, I just was trying to go through like my personal history and try and find something that I think would connect to the idea of fortune, luck in Vegas. And I was telling everybody this earlier. When I was a kid, I was really interested in like magic, like card tricks, that kind of magic. Like I did parties. I had like a little vest and I would do like card tricks, but I'd end up being so nervous that I'd try and turn it into a joke because I wasn't actually very good at it. But what my show and tell is I have this set of dice right here. So this right here is a set of loaded dice. And then this set right here is a set of not loaded dice. And so as you can tell, they're pretty much exactly the same. The only way that you can know whether which one is loaded or not is if you have like calipers. So if you kind of like try and check the weight, or if you roll it a bunch of times and then your friends find out that you're cheating, right? So I think that just comes into like my idea of like, it kind of ties into what you were saying, Bonnie, about the idea of like an egalitarian luck. I think really most of the time, I guess, well, if you think about like the Serenity Prayer, if you've ever had the 12 step, or if you were religious, you've probably heard the Serenity Prayer before. It's like, what is it? Let me know the things that I can change and the things that I can't change, and give me like the discernment to know the difference. I think there's a certain thing that's also like the Gambler's Prayer. It's like, let me know which is pure luck and which isn't luck, and which is like weighted luck, and like the discernment to know the difference. And so I think a lot of times when I think about just like luck and chance and ritual, especially like from a personal perspective, I know that like my sort of like personal engagement with like magic, or when I got older, like I'd play a lot of dice games with my friends, like just like on street corners. If you know anybody who knew me from New York, I've taught them this game called Threes, and everybody plays it all the time. And you're like gambling for like dollars, but it's this idea of like trying to control just like the chaos of chance. And I think that was something that in my mind, especially as a kid, trying to have this idea of being able to control just events and just control circumstance. And as I've gotten older, I know that like, especially like in my work practices, I've really embraced the idea of just being uncertain and just letting things kind of play out as they are. I had a professor, like, this is probably 10, 15 years ago, when I first started poetry. He told me, he's like, sometimes your poems are smarter than you. You just kind of have to let them do their own thing, and you have to take your thumb off the scale. And so it's just something that came to my mind when we're thinking about this idea of like ritual and luck. Like a ritual can be just being able to, rather than trying to perform a ritual to influence chance and influence luck, there's a ritual of also just being able to accept like being in uncertainty. And that's just, especially in these times, it's something that I've kind of taken, I guess, taking comfort in, is like, it's all right to just like not know and just kind of like be thrown to the winds of chance, at least for me personally. That is my show and tell.
Thanks, Chooks. I think that kind of, I mean, I agree that maybe to some extent now is a good time, or it's a time when we do kind of have to say, well, you know, maybe we don't have control over these certain things, and accept that. But I was just thinking that I actually feel like I've gone in the reverse direction, where I've always been kind of all about like going with the winds of time and fortune, and maybe am like veering in the opposite direction now. So I'm kind of interested in like how people's relationships with, or like perspectives on that change over time. Like Maxwell, you were saying that you don't really like believe in luck. Like, have you always been that way? And Hyunji, like, have you always kind of been into like rituals and talismans and so on?
For me, I've been fairly skeptical of like everything since like I can remember. I think I had a period of time when I was like 7 years old where I briefly like, you know, flirted with the idea of believing in God or something, and then quickly, I don't know. I just like I've always been skeptical of everything my entire life. I think it was kind of instilled upon me by my parents, who both did grow up, like my dad went to like a Catholic school, and my mom, like, you know, was her mom was like a practicing Jew, and it's like, but they passed down, you know, some of the rituals to me, but nothing that was ever like they never said to believe in anything, and I think I took that away from that and just didn't, you know.
Yeah, so I feel like for me, actually, contrary to many Koreans in America, I didn't grow up religious. My parents were actually Buddhist, but which has some background from Korean shamanism. But I grew up pretty like neutral on most things. But in terms of, I feel like I really delved in more to like researching Korean shamanisms and these talismans when my grandparents kept sending these for years and years, and I just never questioned what they were. My parents were just like, just put it in your wallet. It's like for your protection. And so, you know, and then I think one year I was like, what are these? And I feel like maybe I still think I'm like a little bit skeptical to a certain extent. I think it's more of like, I believe in the energy that's in them that helps protect me or whatever, like for the purpose, the intention of the talisman. So maybe it's a bit of like placebo or like positive psychology or something, but I like to think that I believe in at least the energy of them or what they provide for me, or it's just like, you know, there's like the personal element of it being from like my family member and like, you know, thinking of them, thinking of me, and it's kind of this protection. But yeah.
I guess I just wonder, Maxwell, like, but like being, I don't know, I guess I don't really know anything about perfume,
Yeah.
I guess. But I think of it, and maybe it's because I can't smell, that I think of like smell as like this very like mysterious thing. And for perfume also to be like, there's something like, I don't know. It's interesting for me to try to like reconcile like the, I guess the idea of like the skeptic perfumer, you know, with like what it is that you're doing, especially when you're like, well, you know, there's this guy who like, you know, the guy you were talking about who like, you know, had his son or something smell for him. And he's like, you know, it's like a little bit like alchemistic, like, you know, I don't know.
No, I totally get that, and it's funny because I think one of the reasons that perfumery seems so sort of like you know, alchemical or has like this kind of like you know, mystery to it is really like goes to the idea that we don't actually know that much about our sense of smell, and it's sort of like the last thing that we have really studied in like a scientific sense. And one of the reasons is that our sense of smell isn't really like as sort of necessary as many of our other senses anymore. I mean, I think it used to be much more necessary when we were, you know, prehistoric times, when we were being chased down by, you know, bears and lions and things like that, and we'd have to smell them coming. And sort of, you know, that's sort of like our main sense when it comes to like fight or flight is like, is our sense of smell. And I think, you know, when we smell things, we react to things in ways that we don't really quite understand. And I think that kind of plays into the idea that we think of things that we don't quite totally understand as being magical. And we don't even really kind of know like why things smell differently than they do. We don't know those things for certain on like a, you know, scientific level. You know, there's varying theories as to like why certain things smell differently. Like some people think it's like the shape of the molecule, and there's this guy Luca Turin who's sort of like one of the most famous like theorists about smell, and he says that there's like a vibration within the molecules that makes it smell differently. And it's like that's, you know, a lot of people think that's hogwash, but some people think, you know, that might be why we smell things in certain ways. And I think like, you know, when I do have like an appreciation for like the kind of the various materials that I use and what they mean to people. And I like I really want to point out that like I don't like you know, it's just for me, like I personally like have you know, I'm very skeptical and I'm not very superstitious, but I do also like really appreciate skepticism. I mean, the opposite. I appreciate sort of magic, and I love to kind of play in it and dabble in it. And I, you know, like, and I can talk to you about, you know, the horoscope if it comes up, because I understand these games as being like part of our human nature to like think about things that we don't quite understand, and like to talk about magic, and I love them, and I love those things. But yeah, so I think that's why kind of perfumery seems magical, is that we don't really know that much about our noses.
Actually, not to go too separate, but and not to like take over in the realm of scent, but I also actually work a lot with making incense. So I feel like there's a lot of crossover with perfumery, and actually I've taken a class at the Institute of Olfaction. But yeah, so with the history of incense, it's actually like a very multifunctional tool. I mean, it was first used, like one of the first uses was to mask the scent of burning dead bodies. So, you know, really attaching this like sacredness or ritual aspect to it. And then it was also used as a measurement of time, like you know, like a clock. There's like different increments of time for each stick or spiral. And then there's, you know, for hygiene, it was used as like a perfume. So there would be different incense sachets or like the body powders, which were, you know, like just loose herbs, woods, etc., scents into a sachet. People would put in their clothing or their drawers. But I feel like, I don't know, it's interesting because I feel like to me, scent maybe it's like I'm biased and I have this like, I guess, learned training to my nose, and now I kind of I really tie incense with ritual a lot. I mean, I think most people do. I feel like if you're burning incense, it's like very intentional. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's this interesting overlap with like the multifunctional aspect to it, but also like perfumery and incense. But yeah, I don't know. That was a tangent.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. I mean, I think like perfumery and smell definitely have ritual. I mean, I think if you put on like a perfume and you walk out the door, you're kind of like, there's something to, you know, it like kind of giving you like this like invisible force field or something like that. A lot of people talk about that. And yeah, I mean, I think ritual and perfumery are sort of like interlocked, and smell, and I think all of our senses really, you know.
I was wondering, so like, how much does, I guess, like chance have in making these scents, right? Because I know like I used to like brew like absinthe, and I know that there's certain like different potencies of like, if I was using a different wormwood, or if I was using like a different like bit of juniper, you get a different, even if I was following like a very precise recipe, there's always these like weird variations that come into it. Do you have that same thing with perfumery?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like there are chemical reactions that happen, and sometimes you kind of don't know if, like, sometimes they're accidental, for sure. You know, there's the most famous kind of like chemical reaction in perfumery is called a shift space, and it's when it's like two materials and you put them together, and like you sit them for a while, and they make this like totally different material, with totally different molecules, and sometimes that happens. For the most part though, like, yeah, I think I mix a lot of stuff together, and then just like evaluate it at the end, and so like, yeah, a lot of it does come down to just sort of like, to me it's very much like abstract painting, but like with maybe something that you're going towards at the end or something, like you have like this idea of what you want, and then you kind of abstract paint your way to get there or something.
Jukes, are you superstitious?
You know what? I'm so, it's selective. It's kind of like that idea of like there's no like atheists in a foxhole thing, and there's no like altruists in a breadline. Like it's, I find myself, I'm pretty not, to be honest. Like I think we've talked about like the zodiac and horoscope and stuff, and it's not really like my bailiwick. But like there's certain times where I'll be like, oh my God, please, and I'm like, why am I doing this? You know, it just depends on like how desperate I am, quite frankly. But I do think that there's certain things that I'm like, okay, I definitely can't explain that. But for the most part, I try and be maybe it's just an idea of I want to feel like I'm in more control of things than I am, for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do wonder if it is about like your personal feelings or philosophies on like power and agency and control. You know, when I was originally thinking about this event, I kind of had thought about fortune and luck being on one side and ritual as being kind of an oppositional force, like ritual being the thing that you can control, or expressing a desire to control things in your life, you know, with a desired outcome. You can kind of decide whether or not a ritual has been effective or not. You know, it's like the results can be measured, whereas luck kind of seems random. But I guess I don't know. I mean, I think over time, as I was saying, you know, with like coincidence, I think actually luck, to believe in, I guess over time I've come to think that they are actually maybe on the same side of things. That to believe in the possibility of a ritual being effective is also to believe in, you know, something akin to luck or fortune. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have thoughts about that. Like how do they relate to each other? Are they the same? Are they opposite?
I've always had this like feeling that, you know, like luck, like at least from, maybe it's just from like my upbringing, but rituals are something that you kind of you invoke to basically like modify, enhance your luck and like chance is basically just like that sort of like, or sorry, like fortune is, luck is your fortune is influenced by your luck. You use a ritual to influence your luck, which will in turn like amplify your fortune. But I don't know. At least just in my thinking, that's always kind of how I've thought about things. You know, it's generally that like rituals are performative actions to influence your fortune.
Can you think of certain rituals that you perform or have performed at various times in your life?
Oh yeah, way too many. I know that I have, and maybe they're just like idiosyncrasies, but I know that there's things that I rub the heads of like statues and such, you know, like especially like if I was betting, because that was another aspiration that I had. I wanted to be like a riverboat gambler. And I had rituals. Like if I was going to roll die, it's like, it's here, and then you throw it out, like that kind of stuff. And I think somewhere in your head, you know, it's arbitrary, but if you don't do it, it's also that idea of just if I did that once, would that actually have influenced it? You know?
I think you claimed that you don't really believe in this stuff, but I think you
told
do.
You, it's totally selective. It's totally selective. I mean, I grew up, like, I had a fairly, like, generally religious upbringing. So, like, but I don't really have that sort of, like, it's not really rooted in me anymore, but there's still some superstition there. I definitely have some superstition, especially, like, culturally, there's tons of superstition in Igbo culture, too. So that's another thing. But, yeah, I've got some superstitions, which I know are completely irrational, but every now and then, maybe it helps, you know, like I said, that idea of just like the indifference of the universe. So.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what rituals do I have? And I start, you know, I have like, especially this past year, I feel like I've developed like a lot of small routines. And I was like, well, at what point, like, are these routines or are they rituals? Or at what point does a routine become a ritual? I guess when you decide that you're getting something else out of it, or you want something else out of it. But I mean, I definitely once, this maybe only happened once. No, more than that. I've definitely walked far out of my way to avoid having a black cat cross my path. Like gone, you know, like way down the street and like circled around to make sure like it wasn't directly crossing my path. But the other things, I mean, I think a lot of these things that we do or that I have, you know, started doing like every single day, you know, has to be like in this order at this time. They started out in a very, to serve like practical purposes or to be very functional. And then over time, they have evolved to like, you know, it's like, well, if I don't do these things in this way, then it feels like it has like a larger significance to just like, you know, the direction of my life. You know, I'm like, maybe it's like all of these things that are like actually keeping me, you know, somewhat intact, right?
And I think especially like with just like generally with in the beginning when everything was locked down, I know that the one thing that I did have was like you're saying, like the routines of just like, because without them, it would have felt really like very Groundhog Day-ish. So even as things started kind of loosening a little bit more around here, I would hold on to those routines as something that I'm just kind of like, okay, is this, it's holding, this is keeping my sanity rather than just like waking up and like being like, okay, well, here we are again, and this is the world that we're in. So I don't know. Rituals, I don't want to believe they're that important to me, but they definitely play a major part in my life and definitely in my work. Like I said, I think my biggest one right now is just kind of trying to be as fine with uncertainty as possible, and just being in a constant state of doubt is kind of like my ritual at this point, where it's like, I don't really want to make super long-term plans, because the last time I did that, you know, the world kind of just stopped. So it's like, yeah, well, this is going to be the ritual for now.
I'm wondering, Hyunji, can you talk a little bit about, I only kind of looked at it, the project that you're doing for Eyebeam?
Yeah, of course. So Eyebeam was having this open call for, it's called Rapid Response for a Better Digital Future. So like a couple other artists, like 20 or so other artists worldwide received it as well. So my project was, it's based on this. So in 1998, LG, the Korean electronics company, created a 10-year-old non-binary cyber shaman named Saisha, short for cyber shaman. And Saisha was actually a service to protect your computers from viruses and pornography. And Korean shamanism was extremely stigmatized and oppressed at this point. So it was very controversial and very quickly aborted soon after. So my project was to conjure Saisha into an interactive portal, basically, which is essentially a website. So I conjured Saisha. So Saisha is basically this child spirit, kind of reactive AI is how I'm viewing it, that sort of created this portal. So it's all like interactive, all visual, like kind of visual menus, hidden links of like sounds, videos, stuff like that. I was like trying to work on a talisman generator for it. And then at last minute, like I couldn't make it as complex as I wanted it to. So it's extremely rudimentary, but in the future would like to go like delve back into it to make it and more how I'd like it to. But basically, well, so there's different like, so I like to think of some aspects of it as like different like lines of fate that you could sort of like click through. It's like, it's not that deep of a black hole yet. I kind of want to like revisit. I want Saisha to be like constantly evolving as Saisha is adapting more and more to the modern day world. So it's very much the aesthetics of like very like kind of like 90s like GIF sort of kind of thing going on. But yeah, I mean, there, I feel like that's a lot of, there's like, you know, ritualistic aspects of it. I was kind of thinking of like the movement of it. I mean, it's like very performative. So, you know, immortalizing a performance basically, but also thinking a lot about like different lines of fate. Like there's one page where you can pick different objects. And so it's based on the like Korean 100th day celebration for when babies turn 100 days old. They have this big celebration. They're like dressed up and like have all these like an altar with all these foods. And then they have a game that they place objects in front of the baby, and they're like a thread, a spool thread, and like a pencil would be a good writer, or like a spoon would be a good like cook or something. So all these different things like that you could, you know, click on and it would determine your fate, the thread. And I'm like, of course, I don't really want to live that long, but yeah, I feel like Koreans are very superstitious. Like I actually, I can recall like as a kid growing up, like I would sometimes sleep with the fan on and my parents would freak out because apparently it's like this thing, if you sleep with the fan on, you're gonna die. And number 4 is really unlucky. So in old buildings, like some elevators, there won't be like a number 4. It'll just like, it'll just have a different placeholder. So 4 was like, because it was translated to basically death. And then also writing your name in red ink. So I actually got my name tattooed in red ink as like a way to defy that superstition, I guess. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny. But also what you're saying with ritual and routine. I mean, I was thinking a lot about that, and like, I feel like maybe a big difference between the two is like ritual is very, I don't know, there's like a sacredness, a mysticism, and like an intention, I guess. Maybe routine has some intention, but maybe it's a bit more mundane, or like not as thought, like, you know, you're not like thinking too hard about making something, I don't know. And then what else was I gonna say? I'm forgetting, but I guess that's all I have to say right now.
Okay, well, it looks like nobody wants to show and tell except Vera, who will share a tarot deck. And then we actually have a couple of questions. So maybe we can have Vera show a tarot deck, and then we can answer the questions from the Q&A. If someone who has control out there can, oh, there.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so yeah, I have kind of a straightforward object as it relates to like fortune and luck. It's my tarot card deck. It's in this like flippy cool box with like a little ribbon. But I think it's interesting because kind of I feel like I approach magic with a little bit of like with both veneration, but also with a little skepticism. Like I don't think that the tarot deck has like all the answers to life's quandaries, but I think like in like shuffling it and kind of like letting it be random, you kind of like reveal the machinations of the universe, because you're letting it you're letting it out of your hands and just like doing something random. And that is kind of like the magic underlying energy beneath everything. So it's kind of like the universe is telling you something. But I also don't think like it necessarily shows you like it magically picks the right card. I think like psychologically you kind of like see the answer that you need to see, like in your subconscious. And it definitely is kind of like also a measure of taking back control over like when you feel like you have no idea what's going on and you have no control over anything. I don't know if like pulling a card will necessarily affect your luck one way or the other, but it could like make you aware of like the secret machinations in like your mind or in your life. So yeah, this is my tarot deck. I think it's very beautiful. It also has, this is the star spinner deck, and it has 4 different kinds, I think 3 or 4 different kinds of lover cards for like different kinds of homosexual or heterosexual relationships. That's all.
Cool, thanks. You know, I think one thing about rituals is like, even if like maybe it's about more, it's about like what the ritual actually says it's supposed to be doing, but also I mean, I think it has like larger reverberations in terms of like what it does to you as a person who performs or, you know, enacts rituals, and what that does, you know, in a culture also. All right, so I'm going to read the questions that we have. First question: what are some superstitions in perfumery?
For me, I mean, I'm not really aware of anything that's like necessarily a superstition. I do know that some of the oils and some of the materials do have kind of superstition bound to them. Like I was saying before, like I had pulled out a couple of materials that we all think of sage when we think of, superstition. It's sort of a sacred indigenous plant. And, we think of frankincense when we think of the Bible, and it's also kind of, it's sort of bound to the ideas of fortune, as is myrrh. And, ylang ylang, I believe, has sort of these properties that are, superstition, if you're looking for love. I love those things about them. I think that they're great, and I like to observe them too. I love to observe. When I'm, I've gotten my read with a tarot deck before, and I love the ideas of like Vera was saying, the idea of kind of unlocking these properties in your mind, and maybe there is a little bit of magic in our minds, in how we think and how we put things together, how our synapses connect, and I think those same sorts of things happen in perfumery. When you smell something, it connects these things in your mind. Our sense of smell is very old. It's part of kind of our limbic system, which is sort of the earliest part of our brain which developed. And I think we don't really understand how we react when we smell things. And I think that's sort of this beautiful thing about perfumery, is that it's connected to our memory bases. And so when we smell something, we can maybe have a flash of a memory or something like that. And to me, that has a certain, even though there's a scientific kind of explanation for it, there is a magic there as well. Yeah.
That's all I wanted you to say. So that's just my goal of this event, is to get everyone to say something like that. Does anyone else have any response to that? Okay, so let's see. We have another question. How have you seen luck and fortune play out in your careers? Do you connect that with a ritual you've done?
I guess, I mean, I was doing a lot of performance artworks at some point. And so a lot of them were rituals, kind of more healing of past traumas, etc. But I guess one thing that I kind of think of that's kind of funny is, so a lot of these I'd also drink talismans in the ritual. But so a lot of times the talismans, they're best energetically when they're written specifically for you based on your the time of your birth and your name. But so I received these set of talismans from my father, who had received them from his mother when he immigrated to America. So they're over 30 years old. And he gave them to me. I've had a pretty rocky relationship with my parents. I think it was after they disowned me, I got one of them tattooed on my neck. And I had a general idea of what it meant, but I guess I wasn't sure the exact intention of it. And so after doing more and more research over the years, I finally found the exact one that I was like, oh my God, it actually means and it makes so much sense. It actually means furthering your career, which I think is pretty hilarious, because it makes so much sense. It's my grandmother got it from my dad moving to America, and of course that's what she would get for him. I don't know, I felt like it was a very immigrant kind of related thing to give. So I don't know, maybe in some ways that has helped me, but I've gotten since then a lot of other of my talismans tattooed on me as well. So kind of a funny thing, but maybe it's helped.
There's another question that's kind of connected to that, so I'll just ask you now, Hyunji. Someone wants to know, Kayla wants to know what it tasted like drinking, I guess, the ashes from your burned talismans.
Yeah, I mean, pretty smoky. I mean, so a lot of times I would make like an elixir with different herbs and stuff in it. I was also, at some point, I was kind of like abstracting the talisman into like tattooing them onto oranges. So like, you know, the cinnabar from the ink that I would use for talismans, but like tattoo red inks, but then like the idea of like juicing, I don't know, it's kind of doing a lot of like new age health trends and like kind of mocking it, but ritualizing it. And like a lot of tattooers would first practice on citrus. So I was like, well, I've been consuming these talismans. So I kind of want to like, you know, it's like kind of like a silly way of like a spiritual ritual with these talismans on oranges. But yeah, I mean, it's more of just like a smoky, it's not that pleasant, but I guess I usually drink it with like a weird elixir I make. So, you know, I just kind of down it like a shot, I guess. But yeah.
Okay. All right, another question from Kayla. What are your thoughts on places like Vegas gaining stereotypes regarding luck? Can a single place be luckier than others?
I think Vegas has a lot of bad luck, right? I mean, don't like horrible things happen there. You don't talk about them after.
I mean, I don't, oh, you mean like, you know, things are supposed to stay here because they're so horrible, you got to keep them here. I mean, but that could include like wonderful things as well, you know? I don't know if I think that certain places are luckier than others. I think certainly for certain people, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it applies to the individual. Like for me, like maybe I would believe that a certain place would be lucky for me, but I wouldn't think that it would be lucky for everyone. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's the Bermuda Triangle, right? Which I don't I don't know. I don't not believe in it. So maybe it is, you know, force fields.
Or like haunted places.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. There's actually very close to where I live here, there's a haunted museum.
But I love this place so much. I touched the staircase in it.
Really? I mean, I haven't gone in. I mean, I guess it's just like this guy from a TV show, right? That like he's collected all of these haunted objects. And then he's, I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit about it since you apparently love it, Maxwell.
Yeah, well, because like I like I said, I love, you know, I'm skeptical, but I love superstition. I like watch horror movies all the time, right? So like that's, to me, like those are superstitious things. Like, yeah, I get scared when like ghosts are suggested in a movie or something like that. But I do think like, you know, the reason that I do that is because it's like a psychological kind of like unraveling of like what I'm, you know, most scared of, which is the unknown. But yeah, so they have like this haunted museum in I can't remember the part of town. It's like a little bit further away from the strip, but yeah, it's this collection of haunted objects, and it's like all the dolls that you've heard about that have like, you know, been possessed by spirits, and they've even taken, apparently there's this place, I think it's in Ohio maybe, that is called the Hell House, and it had like a series of hauntings that they observed, and it was in like the news and things like that. And they took like this haunted staircase from this hell house and they put it like into the museum. And like, you're not supposed to like even really look at it. Like you're not supposed to get near it apparently, or you can get possessed. And like, I guess, yeah, I mean, what are the implications of like gathering all of the unluckiest haunted objects in the world into like one building? Is like, you know, if that stuff is real, then you have, you're really like gonna, you know, maybe conjure Satan or something. You know?
I guess that apparently is the note that we're gonna have to end on. So everyone think about that one. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Bonnie and all of our guests. That was an amazing conversation. As a reminder, buy Bonnie's book, All Roads Lead to Blood, and check out all of our special guest works through the links in the chat. If you'd like more interactive components of this, if you like interactive programs, The Believer magazine hosts a weekly interactive workshop on Fridays at 4 p.m. Tune into the next show and tell on November 30th with new special guests. And lastly, early voting is open in Nevada and most states, so please be sure to vote or make a plan at vote.org. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.